is Sachi. Today I'm going to talk to you about managing your yarns for natural dyeing. I'm a weaver and I use thread and yarns a lot for my work. It's very important to manage your yarns correctly in order to do your natural dyeing and not end up with a giant mess at the end that you have to untangle. Today I'm going to show you how to do that. Your yarns come in many forms from the store. They can come in a cake or a ball, in different skeins wound up. This is a 100-gram skein, this is a 50-gram skeins. And when these are undone, they are in this form. You have to prepare your yarns in order to do your natural dyeing. They don't come ready to do that. You can't just put in a skein like this into your pot or wound into a ball or a cake, because it will not allow the threads to swell and the dye to get in to all the nooks and crannies around the yarns and dye them evenly. When you're picking up your yarns, you always need to be aware of how you're doing it and thoughtful. In this case, they usually always come with a tie around them, and that's a perfect place to pick them up from, and it keeps them all in order. This is a 50-gram skein. Once you undo it, it's in this form. So when skeins come from the store, they have a little tie on them and it's too tight in order to dye with. So I'm going to show you how to prepare your skein properly for dyeing with figure-8 ties. So when you're untying a skein that you've bought from the store, you can come to this little tie here. It's the ends of your yarn, and untie them. So you can see, if we were going to use this for dyeing, that it's too tight. It's pushing the yarns together and would not allow the dye to pass around the yarns evenly. So we're going to undo this point and loosen it up. And this tie is going to be using these ends, and you want to work it back through as a figure-8. So one part is going through from the bottom and the other side is going through from the top, creating a little cross in the middle of your yarns. And then you can just do a little knot at the end. And you can see this allows a lot more movement for the yarns to swell and to dye evenly. I'm going to show you how to add 2 more figure-8 ties to this skein. We use a thread of a different fiber type intentionally, because when you're dyeing it shows up as a different color than your protein wool yarn, and that will make it easier when you're cutting it off, and so you don't cut any of your precious dyed threads. So we're going to put these ties, here's the first tie, and we're going to put these 2 ties evenly spread around your skein. You're going to start around the back, and then you're going to divide this skein through the middle here. One side of your thread will go through the middle, and the other side will go through the middle from the bottom, and it creates a nice little X in the middle. And then you can tie it off. You want to leave a lot of room, probably more room than you think with these yarns, so that they have room to move but also keep tidy and in order. I'm going to do one more figure-8 tie on this skein. Place it in the middle under your skein bundle and divide it in half. Your top thread will go through the center from the top, and your bottom thread will go through the center from the bottom. You'll make a cross in the middle, or like a figure-8. And when you're tying it off, you want to leave lots of room. A good rule of thumb is to make sure you have at least 2 fingers that you can fit in between the tie and your skein. So how long should your skeins be? It depends on the size of your pot. Standard skeins come in 24-inch lengths, and they work great for a pot that is about this size. You want to be able to have this kind of action in this pot. And for this length, you would also twist it around and double it over so that your yarns aren't mostly on the bottom of the pot. For this smaller size of pot, you want a length that's maybe a bit shorter, maybe about this long. And that will be more manageable for this size of dye pot. So if I'm turning this cake of yarn into a skein, we want to estimate how long we want that to be depending on our pot size. If I'm using a pot about this size, I like to take a piece of twine and kind of estimate how it's going to hang in the pot. We want it to be mostly elevated, some on the bottom of the pot is okay. So I would estimate that I need my skein to be about this length for this pot. This is a very simple swift that's just store-bought, very common. You just want to open it up. I have my approximated length of a skein here, and I'm going to use it to measure how open this swift should be. So from this cake of yarn, I'm just going to pull out the thread from the center, and I'm going to loosely tie it onto one of these arms. And then you simply apply tension with this arm and spin the swift with your other. There are many tools you can use in order to make a skein from your ball of yarn. We have our approximate length of skein here, and we can approximate how long the skein is on our different tools. This is a very simple skein winder that's homemade, very easy to make. You take your yarn from your center pole, tie it on one side, and you just keep a nice gentle tension. Now I'm going to show you winding a skein on a knitty knotty. This is a fun little tool. It rotates at the top and bottom. We're going to approximate that I want the skein about this long. And again, I'm going to tie the end of my yarn to one side of the knitting knotty. This is how to make a shorter skein, but you can see if I want to make a longer skein, I just go around all the ends. So I can even use something as simple as a binder or a big book to wind my skein around, or the underside of a pot, or a chair, or a friend's hands. Two other options on this table are this more heavy-duty swift, which is similar to the one I had used before, and this swift here. We just love this one for its smoothness and its mechanisms in our studio. Now I'm going to show you how to manage your yarns in the dye pot. We're going to use some ECAT tape. We love using this ECAT tape in the studio here. It is resistant to high heat, and you can split it this way as well just by tearing it at the top, and it runs all the way down. So we'll want pieces about this length. For this skein and this size of pot, I'm just going to roll it in half and have it into a more manageable length here. I'm going to take the ECAT tape and just tie a nice big loop around it. And then in my pot, these skeins will sit on this rod. And for this size pot, we can use about 4 skeins. You don't want to overcrowd your pot with fiber. otherwise you won't get an even dye job. So here you can see that these yarns will be sitting underneath the water. The water level will be about here, and they're just gently touching the bottom there a little bit. These bundles I'm going to be able to take off of the rod and dip in, and they're also great because I can shift the skein in the dye pot periodically. So this is how you would prepare your yarns for any in-pot process. That would be scouring, mordanting, tanning, or natural dyeing. So if we're using a pot this size, you would use less yarns, probably about 2 yarns for this size of pot, so you're not overcrowding your yarns in the pot. Another way of managing your yarns without a rod is to affix this little ring of ikat tape with another piece to the handle of your pot. You want this long enough so that it's going to sit below the water level, and then you can still lift it up and manage it. Another tool you can use to manage your yarns in this size pot are these stainless steel rods. We have these specially made for us. It's important when you're doing your natural dyeing and scouring and all your processes to use stainless steel because it's non-reactive. So how this rod works is you just simply slip your skeins onto it, and they sit in this indented way under the water level in your pot, and then you can rotate your yarns by doing that. So if you're wanting to make smaller skeins for test dyeing or embroidery or for tapestry, a great way of doing it is to figure out how many turns it takes on a binder or a chair or whatever you're using to skein in order to create a 5-gram or a 10-gram bundle. And once you know that, you can just repeat and make multiple small skeins using that count. And we have some little tricks in order to do multiple colors for many little skeins in your dye pot. So imagine that you have this filled up with your dye and you have multiple of them, and we can put 3 to 4 skeins of yarn in each jar, and we're going to put this at the bottom, and that prevents the mason jars from cracking. And we'll have several of these jars of different dye colors in this bath, and the water is just quite a few inches below the lip of the jars. We have our chopsticks, and we can manage within the jar, just keeping the yarns moving, and it's quite easy to pick them up and just move them around. This is a really nice way of doing multiple little skeins of different colors in the same water bath. For small skeins, you can also use this little pot. For a pot this size, we don't tend to hang our yarns, but we can place them in and manage them in there just because they're small. So it's lots of different ways in order to manage your yarns for different projects and different dye jobs. Next, I'm going to show you how to manage your yarns after the dye bath. Here's some examples of some beautifully naturally dyed skeins of yarn. We like to reskein our yarns after they come out and are completely dry, and you do that by putting your dry skein onto a swift and then winding it onto another swift or whatever method you chose to skein in the beginning. This really refreshes your skein of yarn, and we tie the ends together or wrap them around to make a nice little tie at the end and make it very manageable. To store your yarns or to sell them, they're nice to be bound into this kind of form, and I'll show you how to do that now. You take your skein between your 2 hands and give it a good tug to line up all the yarn, and then with your one hand you're just going to twist the bundle repeatedly until it feels nice and tight and a little bit tighter than you think you'll need it. And then you just relax your hands together and it'll kind of fold in on itself. Twist again with your outside hands. And then one side is going to go through the loop of the other side. Give it a nice tug, straighten them out, and you have your skein bound up. For your little skeins of yarn and your multiple colors, we like to store them like this. It keeps them all nice and tidy. You do a similar process, so you take your little skein and you're twisting with one hand. You keep going until it feels quite tight. And you do the same, you relax your hands together and it will kind of twist in on itself. And at the top we're going to do a lock, and one side will go through the center of the other side, and then the inverse, the side that just went through the center, will come back through the center of the other side. Give it a little tug and it will lock it in place. I'm going to show you that lock one more time. So the right side is going to go through the left side center. And then what's now your right side will go through the left side center again. If you're keeping a dye journal or doing samples, it's nice to wrap little pieces of yarn into what we call a butterfly for storing and for labeling. You just take a length of your yarn, and we're just going to do a butterfly around your thumb and your pinky finger. So I like to hold it between my thumb and my hand, and then wrap around the pinky, and then back around the thumb, and then you can just do this motion. And once you have it complete, you can just pinch the middle, take your end, and you're just going to do a hitch. So you make a little loop and the end goes through it, and you can just tighten that up and you have your little butterfly. I'm going to show you that butterfly one more time. So you take the end between your thumb and your hand, and then the other side wraps around your pinky finger, and then back around your thumb, and then pinky, and you can start getting quite natural with it. And then once you're done, you pinch the center, take your end, make a little loop at the center, and take your yarn end through that loop. Just give it a little tug to tighten it up. And then you can snip that a little shorter to make it nice and neat. If you're a knitter, you might want to turn your skein of yarn into a ball or cake. I'm going to show you how to do that now. I have my skein on a Swift here, and I'm going to take the end over to our ball winder. And there is your lovely cake of naturally dyed yarn. Yarns are some of the easiest goods to naturally dye. Once you know how to manage your yarns in the dye pot, the possibilities are endless. If you take some thought and care in the beginning, you can end up with a very, very beautiful, satisfying product.